Well, last week we learned how God can use even the most messed up family. We heard how Joseph's father loved him more than the rest of the kids, and even gave Joseph a special robe so that everyone would know it. Joseph's jealous brother stole that robe, covered it with blood, and let Dad think that a wild animal had eaten him. Oh, and they also sold Joseph into slavery. What a family. But God used that family to bless each one of us, because it is this family that would lead ultimately to Jesus Christ. Even in messed up families, God is watching over us. But today we'll see that even if God is watching over us, that doesn't mean that life is going to be a bowl of cherries. In fact, Jesus says in John 16 that in this world we will have troubles. That's a promise. Thank God our troubles aren't quite as bad as Joseph's. We'll pick up his story this week in chapter 39 of Genesis. This is just after he was sold. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So he left in Joseph's care everything he had, with Joseph in charge, and he did not concern himself with anything except the food that he ate. The Lord was with Joseph, it says. And what does he get? Does he win the lottery? Does he get his own house? Does he get his dream job? No. Potiphar gets rich. Potiphar gets to kick back and relax and not worry about anything but the food he stuffs in his mouth. But Joseph gets to be his slave and do all the work and take all the responsibility, while Potiphar gets all the benefits. It's situations like these that make people question their faith. You look at the world and the bad guys seem to prosper. It's the drug lord who drives around in the Lexus while the kid working hard to graduate from school has to walk. It's the banker who loses billions of our dollars who gets the $1 million bonus. And all the time I hear people say to me things like, "Look at the world. How can you believe in God? I prayed and all I got was, pardon my French, pissed on. I got screwed. Don't tell me that God is watching over me. If God is watching over me, then why does my life suck?" You might have heard people say that to you. Maybe you felt it yourself. And they throw that down as a challenge, as if it proves that Jesus isn't real, because their life is difficult. When all it really proves is that Jesus keeps his promises. In John 16:33, Jesus promises us that in this world we will have trouble. That's a promise. So if you want to doubt when somebody tells you that believing in Jesus will make you rich. Doubt when somebody tells you that real Christians don't have troubles. Doubt when things are so easy that all you have to think about is the food you stuff in your mouth. If you want to doubt Jesus, doubt then. But when things are tough, don't doubt. Just say to yourself, there's Jesus keeping his promise. But then also say, and he'll keep all the other ones too. The Lord will be with you, just as God was with Joseph. So let's see what happens next. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. And after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." Didn't know those kinds of stories were in the Bible, did you? And some of you might be thinking, wow, things are finally looking up for Joseph. He's being seduced by his slave master's beautiful wife. He can have a little fun with this cougar and then get back at his master all in the same time. Finally, Joseph has caught a break. But an opportunity to do what's wrong is not a break. It's a trap. It's not a blessing, but a curse. God is not smiling on you when you get the chance to do something immoral or illegal, even if you think you can get away with it. Getting in on the action, whether it be drugs or a Ponzi scheme or sex, is not the way to finally have the life you've been looking for. This offer of sex might have seemed like the best thing to happen to Joseph in a long time, but in reality, it's the worst. Even when Joseph does what's right, he will, pardon my French, get screwed. And no pun intended. See, here's what happens. But he refused. With me in charge, he told her, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he's entrusted in my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. Joseph turns her down. He does what's right. He won't sin against God or break the trust that Potiphar has in him. He is a man of integrity. And once he realizes the temptation, not only does he refuse to go to bed with her, but he refuses to even be with her. And this is where a lot of people mess up when it comes to temptation. Instead of distancing themselves from it, they keep it close by. It's like trying to give up sweets with a jar of candies on the counter. It's like trying to give up drinking while going out with your friends to the bar every night. It's like trying to avoid an improper relationship while still putting yourself in one-on-one situations with the other person. We pray in the Lord's Prayer, lead us not into temptation, and God won't lead us there. So for heaven's sakes, why would we go there on our own? Joseph knows that if he's going to avoid the trap, he needs to put distance between himself and Mrs. Potiphar. So he refuses to be alone with her. But still, you can do everything right. You can honor God and take every precaution to guard your heart, but you can still wind up in trouble, just like Joseph. As is often the case, those who want you to do wrong don't always stop with the first no. They keep pressuring and pressuring. And that's why it's best just not to hang around with people like that. But sometimes you have no choice. And so you get screwed, pardon my French. Happened to Joseph. One day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called her household servants. "Look," she said to them, "this Hebrew has been brought to us to make sport of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed. And when he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." She kept his cloak beside her until his master came home. Then she told him this story. "That Hebrew slave you brought us came to me to make sport of me. But as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." When his master heard the story his wife told him, saying, "This is how your slave treated me," he burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined.